Again, Go-Daigo had to abandon his palace, and again he fled southward, this time to the Yoshino Mountains. There he set up a rivaling southern court, from where he coordinated the resistance by his many supporters.
Greetings everybody, I am the Sensei of the Shindo Fushin Dojo under the name Shigana.
This entire Southern Court loyalist. Brief history lesson.
Monarchic reform is part of the manifesto of the current movement. This is unprecedented.
The Southern Court loyalists are very big on spells and magic. And that might be, I'm not going to say it is 100%, but it might be the fact that the Southern Court capital was Yoshino. And Yoshino is also the capital of Shugendo, for lack of a better word. There's a lot of Shugenja and a lot of Shugendo taking place in this area. Yoshino, so perhaps because of just the area where the capital was, the Southern Court loyalists are very influenced by an abundance of magical spells. Buddhist spells, Shugendo spells, Taoist spells, Shinto spells. There's just a lot of magic. Like, for example, there's an entire set of magics that are, or actual not there's, when I say, okay, I need to make a difference here. When I say magics, I mean worldly spells. Spells that involve worldly gods and worldly spirits. Then there is puja and sadhana. I know I'm using Sanskrit words, but let me explain. Puja is like a giant ritual, and then sadhana is like a specific ritual. Puja and sadhana are very similar, but when I say puja or sadhana, or I say sort of ritual practice, I'm talking about Buddhist ritual practice, like a Buddhist ritual, a Buddhist deity practice, a Buddhist sort of ceremony, puja, sadhana, ritual. When I say magics, I mean like Shinto magic, Taoist magic, or a Buddhist practice that doesn't involve enlightened beings but involves worldly deities, right? So like, for example, you can have Buddhist ritual which involves worldly deities, basically like a ritual to placate a particular class of violent spirit. So that kind of sits on the edge because it's using a Buddhist dharmic ideology and method, but it is involved to worldly spirits. And then there's just, so that sometimes is just Buddhist ritual. But then when I say magics, I mean just like, it doesn't really involve anything dharma. It's really like a worldly methodology, a worldly magic. So the Southern Court loyalists are extremely deep in Buddhist puja, Buddhist sadhana, Buddhist ritual, and worldly magics. So that's something you just kind of gotta understand, this idea that you have conspirators who are heavily involved in magics is, again, that's something from having come from the Southern Court loyalist. Southern Court loyalist methodology means you are well trained in magic. So if you're a conspirator, you're going to have all these techniques for conspiracy, and then you're going to have all of these magics for conspiracy. On one hand, that's common for all of the samurai to have some kind of magic, but for the Southern Court loyalist, there's like a lot of magic, like a lot more than usual. It's not unusual for a samurai who's not at all affiliated with Southern Court ideology to have some kind of spell here and there, but the Southern Court loyalists have a lot of magic, like a bunch. So, and that's probably because of being based out of Yoshino, right? We're talking about a hub of magic, a hub of Buddhist ritual, Buddhist puja, Buddhist sadhana, and Taoism, and Shugendo, and Shinto, and just a lot of magics taking place, ritual and magic taking place.
So ritual life at the court has always been determined, or at least strongly influenced by the court astrologers in the past.
So that's something you just have to understand. Anyway, okay, that having been said, moving on. You are not qualified to do this magic. If you are qualified to do this magic, you've already know what to do. You're already qualified. This is for information purposes only. Basically, well, You have to find somebody who's a very advanced practitioner. This is information purposes only. Now that that is well stated and I've said it clearly, we'll continue. Go-Daigo's intention in the Southern Court. Go-Nansho in the Second Southern Court. Or go. This is a little bit of linguistics for you. Go can mean honorable, but go also means afterwards or second or the later, right? It depends on the kanji, obviously, but Go-Nansho in this case means the Second Southern Court, or Go-Nansho can mean the Southern Court that came after. It's like the second, the latter, later, the latter, like the prior and then the afterwards. So like Go-Nansho, the afterwards Southern Court. So the Second Southern Court. So you'd have the Nansho, and that would be the original Southern Court, and then the Go-Nansho would be the Second Southern Court. So this is fairly common. You will see a lot of things where it's go this or go that, and it means that it's somehow connected to the original. It's a revitalization of the original, or the original stopped and then started up again. But like, okay, so say man X starts it, then he quits, and then man X's son, who is Y, decides to start it again, but man X is out of the picture, but now Y has started it, then it's called go. You see what I'm saying? Or something along those lines. Or man X starts a business, right? And then and it's around for like 30 years, and then it goes out of business. Well, man X's top employee decides to make a few years pass, and he decides to just take everything about it and create it again. You see what I'm saying? It's like that. So Go-Nansho is a continuation of the Nansho, but technically the Nansho did end during the treaty, and then when the treaty was broken, then the Nansho came again. But that was the next, see what I'm saying? That's the next Southern Court, or the Second Southern Court. So when you talk about the Southern Court, even if I say Southern Court, you got to remember it's Go-Nansho, it's the Second Southern Court. The First Southern Court did end during the treaty, and then it came back. Then the Southern Court arose again a second time, so it's the Go-Nansho, Second Southern Court. And that's what we're talking about. It's a topic that's rarely discussed by Japanese scholars because there's been many times in history where it's actually been a forbidden topic. It's a taboo topic, and there's just no way around that. It's more free to talk about it now. You see, there is with time more and more things being published about it, but for a while it's just not something you're just not allowed to talk about it. I mean, especially like in 1910, there's a Shusui Kotoku who, in I think it was 1910 or 1911, I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, I think it was 1910. He was talking about the Southern Court, and he was like, oh, the Northern Court, and he basically says, like, is this Northern Court not fake? Is the Southern Court not actually the real court? And he was executed for that. So I mean, even in like 1910, he wasn't allowed to openly just talk about that. So and there's many Japanese historians who brought this up, and their careers took not many, I don't like, oh, there were so many, but there's occasionally been people who have tried to bring this up and their careers take a nasty hit for it, right? So talking about the Go-Nansho and the potential for there to be another emperor in Japan is just, it's a taboo topic. I'm not going to say that they're not going to hunt you down and kill you because you're talking about it, right? But it's still socially a taboo topic. However, because I don't really care about that kind of taboo, I'm just openly talking about it like it's everybody's business, Everybody needs to know about the Second Southern Court. You have got to understand the Go-Nansho, the Second Southern Court. It's a critical piece because the people involved are with Go-Nansho Chushin, whatever, they are Southern Court loyalists, loyal retainers, right?
In Buddhist cosmology, this pyramid actually extends beyond society right into the heavens. So you have a pyramid toppled by the Buddha as perfect beings. Then you have gods as semi-perfect beings. And then you have humans also ordered hierarchically on the basis of their positive karma, of their merit, of their virtue. And a king sits on that line between the semi-perfect gods and these virtuous humans. So he is the being who really blurs the line between these divinities, right, and humans.
So I just do a real brief overview of this. If you need to know more about the Nanbokucho, you should probably go and research it on the internet. And I hate to say that, I hate to say go to the internet, but it's fairly well documented. The Kenmu Restoration, Emperor Go-Daigo, Ashikaga Takuiji, Kusunoki Masashi. Kusunoki Masashige is actually, in some places, he's, like some websites have good information on him, right? But honestly, just be careful, because the majority of the information about Kusunoki Masashige is myth. It's a lot of BS. He died in 1336, and then hundreds of years later he became a symbol of something that he probably wouldn't have actually stood for, But anyway, he became a symbol of a loyal retainer dying to the very end. But it wasn't like he was a loyal retainer because he was a mindless puppet or something. He was a loyal retainer to the emperor, right? And the irony of that is that later on in history, the Northern Court emperors would use him as a symbol to get people to follow them, which is actually a deep insult, because Kusunoki Masashige died defending the Southern Court emperor, not the Northern Court emperor. So it's to be honest, it's some pretty green shit that the Northern Court emperors utilized him as propaganda. It's some pretty green shit. But anyway, so yeah, Go-Daigo. So this story really begins during the Kenmu Restoration. Kenmu Restoration, in a real brief summary. So the House of Hojo in the 1300s basically had ripped the country away from the emperor, and the government was basically run by almost like a military-industrial complex. Martial law, like the military is just married to everything, right? And Go-Daigo said, no, that's not going to happen. The country doesn't need to be a military-industrial complex. It doesn't need to be run by the military. It's going to be run back by civil administration. And then the military is going to serve the civil administration. So that's the Kenmu Restoration. So he came through, and this is truly where Kusunoki Masashige is at in history. They always claim him in the Nanbokucho, but he dies at the very beginning of Nanbokucho. Kusunoki Masashige was the hero of the Kenmu Restoration. That is when Go-Daigo regains power from the Hojo. So the Hojo are beaten, and their house falls, and Emperor Go-Daigo takes control of the country. Everybody's a winner, yay, But then Ashikaga Takuiji, one of Kusunoki Masashige's co-generals, one of the guys next to him in terms of rank and everything, basically decides that even though they just ousted the Hojo, he wants the same position the Hojo just had, which is shogun. And Go-Daigo Tenno is not going to give it to him. He doesn't want him to be shogun. He's like, we just ousted the Hojo. And then Ashikaga's like, well, then he just summarizing this very simply. Ashikaga creates a new court with an emperor of his choosing, and he basically says, this is the court that's going to run Japan now, and that emperor says I'm shogun. And then the Nanbokucho, the period of the North and South, begins. The Northern Court being the fake court, the Southern Court being the real court. So let's see, we've talked about the Kenmu Restoration, Go-Daigo. Okay, so then 1390s, a peace treaty was reached between the two courts, and that's when the Southern Court and the Northern Court technically came to an end. The Northern Court broke the treaty soon after. So here's where the taboo topics begin. In normal Japanese history, the Northern Court breaks the treaty. There's a brief uprising from the Southern Court, and it just dissipates, right? But like I put at this page, this is false. That's not really what happened. What really happened is that the Southern Court reorganized after the treaty was broken and formed the Go-Nansho, the Second Southern Court. This court began a consistent resistance of both ideology and military campaign against the Northern Court pretenders from the late 1300s till this very day. During the 1400s, the Go-Nansho was behind the assassination of an Ashikaga shogun. When you read, now, This is the thing. When you research regular history, you're going to not, it's not going to say the Go-Nansho assassinated the Ashikaga shogun in the 1400s. You're going to hear so and so, you know, there was a riot one night, there was an attack, so and so cut the head off the shogun, blah blah blah. It's and there's no background to it. It's just like he did it, the end, right? Very few records. This is where you have to get into, like, you know, like Taiheki Hidensho, sort of like the secret the secret Taiheki or the alternate Taiheki collections, right? And is when it talks about, like, it explains exactly who that was, why he did it, what the plan was, what technique was being used, all the planning that involved it, So, like, there's, you know what I'm saying, there's the regular history, and then there's, like, the Southern Court history. And then anyway, so the conflict between Hosokawa and Yamana, which incited the Onin War, as roots in the Go-Nansho campaign as well. Research the Onin War, and then after that you look at the Southern Court's records, and it explains why each of those things happened and how it was related. And it's not, I'm not saying that the Go-Nansho started the Onin War. I'm saying that the Onin War was due to a series of events, and some of those events were related to Go-Nansho activity, and the country breaks into the Onin War. I also talk about the loyalists stealing articles of imperial regalia. This is a taboo topic completely, because I'm openly saying, you know, that the imperial regalia is not where the Japanese government claims that it's at. If you really think that Kusanagi is in Atsura Shrine, then fine, you can go ahead and keep believing that if you want to. If you want to really, you know what I mean? Like, and that's not even a Go-Nansho thing. There's many scholars who are like, that sword is not there. You know, it's just not there. But the point is that there's the sort of socially accepted narrative, and then there's all of the history and evidence and passed down stories that contradict the socially accepted narrative. So the socially accepted narrative is that all the imperial regalia is intact, and the Southern Court loyalists say no, it is not, right? It's either missing, or what is being held as the regalia is actually a fake replica that was made basically as a dummy device. Like, you know, they think that they're recovering the mirror, but it's not the real mirror. They think they're recovering the sword, but it's not the real sword. They think they're recovering the gem, the jewel, but it's not the real jewel, you know, like that. The necklace, you know, like the necklace of supposedly like the necklace of all the little Magatama jewels or whatever, you know, the little kama shaped things. The necklace, the jewel necklace, the mirror and the sword, you know, all of the imperial regalia, supposedly. But you know, the question is it really there? Like, do they have the real one, or is that either completely missing, or is there a replica, you know? So accepted history says that all of the regalia is safe and fine in the shrines, and then alternative history, or, you know, Southern Court history says no, it is not. Japanese history is not black and white. It's not like other countries have complex histories and Japan has an easy, clean history. Japan's history is just as convoluted and covered up and rewritten and just multi-layered as any other country out there. That's what I'm trying to say. That's really what I'm trying to get at. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theory this or political agitation this. I'm just trying to say that Japan's history is just as complex as any other country. And there's multiple layers and multiple perspectives and multiple versions of what happened and da-da-da-da-da-da. Don't just swallow the socially accepted history, without critically thinking about all the other possibilities, because for every story out there, there's 2 or 3 versions of what happened. And I'm just asking you to be open to the fact that there's 2 or 3 versions. The Southern Court issue, the Northern Court, Southern Court issue is still valid. Like, it's even in the modern times, the 1900s, things are still taking place regarding this issue. This is not something that's 500 years in the past. This is something that is like happened in the 1900s. Then I talk about how Taizen's son Hiromichi met with American HQ after World War II, etc., etc., etc. I talk about Hiromichi's son Takanobu, who was in Siberian prison, and then he came back, and then in really recent times, like 1980s, 1990s, recent, like within our own lifetimes, right? Well, I don't know how old all the people listening to this are, but I'm assuming an average listening age of 35. So if you're like 20, then this isn't true. But if you're in your 30s, then this holds true. In your own lifetime, there was a Southern Court push. It was really small and it didn't last long, but it happened. So now, after I sort of go into that, I talk about how the reason why I mentioned all of this, the Go-Nansho and the Kusunokiru and everything, is to put the reader into the understanding and the framework of the origin of Fukushima-ru. And so when you have a clear understanding of this prolonged campaign of the Southern Court and of these dynamics around it, it gives you far your insight. There's 2 manuals. I've looked over it. It's mostly like a bunch of magic, and it's like where a lot of the Taoism and the trigrams and the hexagrams and that, a lot of that stuff comes from. A lot of people go, oh, it's a big secret. It's not really a big secret. If you just take some time and research it, you'll see.
So the Garuda, the half human, half bird being, is supposed to be the vehicle of divine kings.
Embrace natural law and be free.
Not all of Yamato's clans sided with the Southern Court. From ancient times there had been those who patronized